Okay, hello everybody. I'm More Gravity. Let's play chess. By play, we are going to study. Today we're going to study a game that finished about 5 minutes ago. And let's go. Sicilian defense. This is the most common variation for a few moves. And then moving out of the most common realm with the move pawn to c4 is my opponent. My opponent is moving out of the more common moves. Played knight c6. It's just completely viable. My opponent strikes immediately in the center. I like that. He has the chance to do so. He, she, or they, my opponent, he, she, or they has the chance to do so. And so he did. Now, c5 takes d4. Knight takes d4. Now, here's the idea. It's tempting as black here to try to play knight takes d4, but then white gets queen takes d4 and has two awesome pawns. A queen developed onto the d4 square that really can't be pushed around very easily. There are no minor pieces to really worry or scurry that queen. So instead of trading immediately, I tried bishop c5, putting the threat of just capturing twice on d4 into the mix. My opponent wanted to trade off knights, fine move, and I captured with my d pawn because I liked, just out of slight advantages or differences that I was okay with. I liked after queen takes d8, king takes d8. I like that the king, okay, so he can't castle, but so what? This is not a king that needs to castle with queens off the board and most of the attackers resting on their starting squares. So there's not a big deal about not being able to castle in this position. And we're left in a position where black c5 bishop is the only minor piece in play, attacking a pawn that white must babysit to guard. But let's not get too overly optimistic. This is just a game. It's an even game, and that's what black aims for. That's what I got. This is just even Stevens, as they say, even Steven. I'm not necessarily mentioning my connection to that name, but so next move, bishop f4, just developing. It's a fine, safe move. Knight f6, I thought is a good move. This is a good move, developing, but also with an attack on e4 that must be addressed. And oftentimes, if white were to push e5, then the bishop on f4 is attacking the back of his own pawn. So that doesn't work out so well most often. And the knight would just sort of scurry to some reasonably safe part of the chessboard nearby. My opponent didn't do that, and I pretty much put the screws to him about it. Again, king e7, demonstrating that castling is not, well, that's already been done, but allowing the king to be an active part in the defense of his pieces and making room for rook h to d8, and then some tactics perhaps to follow. Bishop b4, pinning the knight in place and making knight takes e4 a true threat. Now black is just going to pick up an extra pawn here. Perhaps there's a way for white to scurry out of it. Stockfish, the computer says rook to e2 is a good move for white to make the position overall about equal. I'm not sold on that. You just play knight back to f6 and be ahead of pawn. Beyond that, I'm not all that worried. you know, the computer probably has it right, and my way is fine for me. It might be like a different form of right. There is such a thing. Okay, so, and that is what occurred in the game. The computer suggested move is actually how the play went. So then with knight to c5, we're looking at the potential of this fork on d3, and this is, you know, for the most part, this is the highlight of the game. This is what made the difference. We don't need to tout this game too highly or grade our opponent too lowly, or vice versa. This is just something. Sometimes a single tactic is the game, and that is, of course, how this game went, with pawn to g4 being a total blunder, and knight to d3 check wins the bishop on f4. Just let some of these moves play out naturally. I might have gotten myself into a bit of trouble with these pawns advancing on the king side, and then I got myself out of it with appropriate concessions. That's one of the things I'm working on and worried about in both chess and life is making concessions. So after h5, the knight is pretty much dominated by white's pieces and pawns. There will be no safe way for me to move that knight out of a potential attack. For instance, rook f3 was looking good, right? This knight is dominated, and ways to protect, maybe rook d4 could do the trick. Actually, I think that does do the trick just in the nick of time, but I didn't see that at the time. If we play g5, we're looking at an en passant situation, and it just doesn't look like the best thing for black. So I thought at the time, well, you know, hey, what if we just make a concession here? And this wasn't quite where that happened. Here, with black to move, on move 20, the move g6. White can capture, and when black recaptures, it can't be with the h7 pawn. So white captures, and black captures with the knight so that he can escape. The h7 pawn would leave the knight still trapped. So recapturing with the knight loses, of course, the pawn on h7, but that's a lot better than losing a full piece in the middle of the board like that. So that was my concession. g6, I think this is a material concession. My uncle would be proud that I even thought to do such a thing. The game follows as I indicated with the arrows and red squares. Then rook takes h7. Right, so pretty much in this sequence, black goes from a material lead of 4, as indicated here, to just 3. But I'm glad I did it, because it's a new thing for me. I've been encouraged to do it, and I won the game. I love winning. Make this trade on h8, which is another part of the bonus of retreating the knight from f6 to g6, is that rook at d8 can go to h8, and the trade of pieces is almost forced. I think it is forced if black really wants to make a thing of it. There are ways where the h8 rook stays in place, and then perhaps the king moves to f6 or f8, and the rook is completely trapped, so as to be completely winning for black. So instead, as planned, and the whole reason behind rook d to h8, or rook to h8, was to make this simple trade. And now black is still 3 pieces of material ahead, but 3 pieces of material ahead with 1 less major piece on the board. These things, sometimes the little things help in wrapping a game up here. Bishop takes g6, and I say, yeah, I'll take you back. Let me gather up this pawn for free first. With rook takes f2 check. Not, you wouldn't say that like that to your opponent, but that's kind of that could be your inner dialogue a bit. Like, you get this done first, king moves, and then capture the bishop on g6. Makes it that much less likely that white will draw or win. More likely than white will. And completely sewing things up with directly after the inaccuracy pawn to g5, we notice that the king and the rook are on the same rank, so there's a safe square to challenge one through the other, and we do so in order to, again, simply trade material, and in this case in a favorable way. Rooks go off, and the rest of this is just some straightforward endgame. And my opponent resigns this. Here, he or they will not be able to safeguard the pawn. Of all the squares covered by black's pieces in the area, there's sort of a wall against this king from coming to the defensive, the g5 pawn, and that being the case, I'm going to go to f5, take on g5, and have an easy day of it. So that was that game. I thought my opponent played well. No reason to hang your head. I thought I played well. No reason to hang my head. And it was an accurate and fun game of chess. Alright. Thank you all for watching. I'm More Gravity. Have a great night.